Coming to you live from the SplatZone Towers, this is the SplatZones.
Welcome to the SplatZones. We are a monthly videocast/podcast where we bring you the best Nintendo-related topics. I am your host, NyceOne983.
And I'm your co-host, MarioAfterParty.
Alright, and guys, it is February 2016. This marks the 20th anniversary of the Pokemon franchise, and for me, there is nothing better to talk about. It is one of the few video game franchises that is transcendent of itself, expanding to anime, manga, digital pets, a TCG game, Happy Meals, films, retail stores, a real-life Pokemon gym, and later this year it will come to conquer the FGC and the mobile market. So for this episode, we're going to talk all about Pokemon and its 20th anniversary, along with sharing some of our own Pokemon moments. Mario After Party, I know that this is a topic you want to get into.
Hell yeah, it's one of the most beloved franchises of all time. And, you know, personally, I mean, I grew up with Pokemon, so it's always great to talk about something that you can kind of reminisce about to your childhood. But I am surprised that it's still, you know, just as popular today as it was when it first came out, if not more so. And that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, man, it's an ever-expanding franchise. It doesn't get any bigger than this. It's really the only Nintendo franchise that rivals Mario at all. But guys, we have some great news topics to talk about. Oh, and by the way, stay tuned to the end of the episode because we are going to give you the details of who won our last contest. And we're going to go ahead and do another contest for a Pokemon prize pack. So let's go ahead and get into it. The Nintendo News Report. And our first story is there are rumors that Smash Bros. Will be coming to the NX as a launch title. This story comes from a market analyst who, you know, has actually broken some major Nintendo rumors before. And he says that Smash is coming to the NX as a launch title. Normally we don't talk about rumors on this show, but this is something I felt that we really had to speak on.
Well, the rumor for that, though, also is that it might just be a complete edition of the version that has come out for the Wii U, where you wouldn't have to buy all the DLC characters. You would have Bayonetta and Cloud and Ryu and all those characters on the game already. So it might not be a new game. It might just be the complete version of all the DLC that was released for the Wii U.
Yeah, similar to like a Game of the Year edition. Still, I'm of the mind that if that's the case, I can kind of buy that. But at the same time, this is something that I just feel that Sakurai doesn't really want to get into. Sakurai is the guy who, as much as he loves the Smash franchise, he doesn't really always seem to love coming back to it. You know that I did an essay a couple months ago where I discussed like why I don't think Sakurai will make another Smash game.
Right.
And one of the key points being Iwata. And Iwata is pretty much the reason that Sakurai kind of did anything for Nintendo. For him not to be there, I find it hard to believe that Nintendo could even convince him to come back. Especially for a remake title, that doesn't seem like Sakurai's forte. And for him to get into another, if this is a new game, I just don't see him pouring his heart and soul into the series so quickly. Usually he has a gap between, you know, each Smash title. He'll be gone for years, or he'll develop something in the middle. He doesn't usually just go straight into a new Smash game. So this is something we had to talk about. There is a level of interest. I mean, I don't know about you, but if it does come out on the NX, I am going to feel slightly burned at repurchasing this game. Especially for a Game of the Year edition if it's a remake. Any thoughts on that, bro?
Well, if it is a completed edition of everything that's come out, I mean, I think it's better that they release it on the NX than to not release it at all, because it would allow the fighting game community to continue playing the same game, just on an updated system. So
that's true, but does getting a Smash game at launch, does that negate getting a Smash game in the console's life? Because we've never had 2 Smash games on a console.
Right, but it doesn't mean that it can't happen. I think that you might see a new Smash game on the NX in a few years, but I mean, it's a lot of speculation. I think it would be better to release it than to not have it at all, personally.
I agree. All right, so that's our first story. Moving on to story number 2. EVO 2016, they announced their lineup. And in the lineup this year, there was an interesting addition. A game that hasn't even been released yet, and that game is Pokken Tournament. This is a very quick adoption of a new game. A game that's really not out yet. There's no scene for it. There's no meta for it. There's literally nothing outside of the game itself. I mean, how do you... There is some time. There's like a 4-month window between EVO and the game's release. But that is a quick adoption of a new franchise. A lot of anime fighters, they're feeling burned by this because, games like Blaze Blue and, et cetera, Anime Clone, are not going to be playable at EVO this year. Neither is Street Fighter 4. It's really just Street Fighter 5 and Pokken Tournament. A lot of people are saying that it took the spot of established games. How do you feel on that?
It's interesting because when I was looking at the comment boards, it was really Smash Melee that was getting most of the heat. A lot of people were saying that Melee doesn't deserve to be there because it's such an old game and they shouldn't have 2 Smash games at EVO. And Pokken Tournament really didn't get a lot of criticism as far as what I saw. I know it got some, but I just think it's amazing that Nintendo has 3 games at EVO, 3 fighting games, when you consider that is a third of the lineup. Just to think that Nintendo would have 3 fighting games at EVO, that's pretty incredible.
Well, yeah, when you think about it, Capcom, the EVO was centered around Street Fighter initially. When EVO as a concept began, it was settled. It was made as a tournament to settle the Street Fighter beef. Who's the best Street Fighter in the world? To see that Capcom has only 2 fighting games, that being Marvel and Street Fighter 5, it is really insane to see that Nintendo, the game known for child-friendly games, has the most fighters at a fighting game tournament.
They're not known for fighting games. That's not what you think of when you think of Nintendo, and they have more fighting games at EVO than anybody else. And Street Fighter 5 was not released when the EVO lineup was announced, but it does have Street Fighter 4 to kind of... It has a history of games behind it that people can say, okay, I kind of know what Street Fighter 5 is going to be like a little bit because, Street Fighter 4 just came out, a few years before it. Pokken Tournament has there's no precedence. There's no history. There's no games that you could say, okay, there was a game before it that is going to be similar. For them to announce Pokken Tournament, I was really surprised, and I think it's awesome. But I mean, it's crazy that they announced that.
Yeah, I agree, man. It's mind-boggling. I know that sometimes that the money involved, the sponsorships that EVO gets, is a lot of the prize pool comes from, the sponsors who make the games most of the time, the developers. Nintendo's footing the bill. That's what a lot of people are saying right now. And you know what? If that's true, good move, Nintendo, because Nintendo spent so long ducking and dodging the FGC, especially the Smash community, that they're finally taking the reins into their own hands, and they're finally saying, we messed up for so many years. We've been messing up since Melee. We're finally starting to get it right with Smash 4. We have another competent fighter coming out. Let's stand behind it. Let's rep it. Let's put it out there, and let's get the people involved. And that's a really good way to build a meta. That's a really good way to build a community. It's worked for Street Fighter. It's worked for Mortal Kombat. And it's worked for Tekken. All these game companies put money behind their games after the fact, be it in sponsorships or prize pools. This is how they build a community around Pokken Tournament. And I think that's all I have to say on that matter. And lastly, a story that Mario Afterparty brought to my attention minutes before we got on here. And that story is Nintendo NX confirmed as a holiday 2016 console.
Confirmed with air quotations.
Yes, we're going to confirm it as a rumor. Mario Afterparty, give me a little bit of the breakdown of how this story came to be.
All right, so, we're always, before we do the show, even though we have a lineup and a plan of what we want to talk about, we're still always going to get the latest news for you guys. So I found this story right before we started broadcasting, and basically it's from a blogger who says that he has the report from a Nintendo employee. He says he can verify their employee ID number, and he has visual proof that the NX has been confirmed as a holiday season launch console for this year, 2016. Just because the guy says that he has all this proof doesn't mean that he necessarily is telling the truth, but I would believe it just because of all the rumors that have been surrounding the NX anyway. They've all been kind of leading in this direction, so
I agree.
I think that's it. They're gonna launch this system for the holiday season this year.
That's true. The rumor also goes on to say that there will be a Zelda title within the launch window. A lot of people are speculating that it's a lot of people would speculate that it's the Zelda Wii U title that has yet to materialize. It's had multiple delays. If this is true, this will mark one of Nintendo's shortest console lifespans since the Virtual Boy. Nintendo usually has about a 5, 6, 7 year turnaround for consoles. The Wii U officially was released in 2012, so it will be a short lifespan for this system. And with that, guys, that is our Nintendo News Report. So let's go ahead and slide into our next section. What are we playing? And Amiibo acquisitions. Guys, been super busy, and there have been no Amiibos since the release of Lucas, so I have nothing on hand. I did play Splatoon yesterday, got into Splatfest, and I just recently copped Fire Emblem Fates. I got the Conquest Edition, so I'm looking forward to starting that. The game's already gotten good reviews, so looking really forward to jump back into a Fire Emblems game. I haven't played one since the Game Boy Advance, so I'll give you some of my thoughts on that as I play. Anything for you, Mario Afterparty?
Yeah, I'm playing Xenoblade Chronicles for the 3DS and Xenoblade Chronicles X for the Wii U at the same time. It's kind of weird, but I never actually, when I first got Xenoblade Chronicles for the 3DS, I put like 15 hours into it, and when some of the other new games started coming out, I just put it down, never finished it, so got into it again, but now I'm playing Xenoblade Chronicles X, so kind of doing them at the same time, but that's what I'm into right now.
How different are they between one another as far as, because I haven't played Xenoblade yet. I have it, Chronicles X, I have it now, but I haven't played it yet. But I heard you actually have to build an avatar right from the get.
Yeah, I haven't put a lot of time into X yet, so I don't want to say, I don't want to try to say the differences just yet. Maybe in the next episode when I've spent more time with the game, but it's definitely there's a lot more freedom as far as just kind of pick, there's a job type system where you get to pick exactly what you want to do to help the colony, and there's a little bit more freedom in what you get to do with your character in that game. But I literally just started playing it, so we'll see.
True. That's it for Amiibo acquisitions and what are we playing. So we are going to go ahead and get into our topic of the month. And like we said in the intro, this is a great topic. We are going to cover the Pokemon 20th anniversary. Man, this is a franchise that has literally brought hours of joy into my life. By no stretch of the imagination am I kidding. This game has literally brought hours of like fascination with it. It's very easy to get stuck in that world, in my opinion. So, with that, let's go ahead and start at the beginning. 20 years ago, 1996, with the release of Pokemon Red and Pokemon Green. Green in Japan, 1996. These games literally are the starting point of what we will know as one of the most fun and addictive and sometimes annoying franchise. I remember the day I picked this game up, and I remember going to the BX, picking up a copy of Pokemon Blue, turning it on, and just finding myself immersed. The first time I ever really played an RPG. Most of the time I would start an RPG and end it. This game had me from start to finish. The slogan, "Gotta catch 'em all," really found its way into my brain. This game obviously developed by Satoshi Tajiri. If you bought a Japanese copy, you know that Satoshi is actually the name, that's one of the preloaded names that you can choose from in the Japanese version. Whereas here we had Red, Blue, and some other name that escapes me. Obviously, this introduces us to the world of Pokemon. We get our starter Pokemon, which to this day are still my favorite. You have your Bulbasaur, you have Charmander, you have Squirtle. What did you pick?
I picked Charmander.
Charmander? Oh, you're a fire guy.
Yep, but I had the blue version, but I picked Charmander for my starter.
Alright, Pokemon Blue. Oh, by the way, Pokemon Blue won Splatfest this weekend, so I also had Pokemon Blue, and I picked Bulbasaur. I don't know, something cute about the little frog with a little bud on its back. So this game introduces us to what is pretty standard for the Pokemon franchise. We get 151 Pokemon, one of them being completely inaccessible to either title. You have your 8 gyms, and you have your rival, which, by the way, MarioAfterParty's government name has been the name of my rival since Generation 4. So there's 3 games in there that I've used him as my rival in those games. This game was amazing for me, dude. Obviously, it came out in America in 1998 as Pokemon Red and Blue instead of the Red and Green. I remember searching for a Pikachu in the Viridian Forest for like an hour and a half. I just could not find a Pikachu. And I was like, I want a Pikachu because Ash has a Pikachu. It's a great game, and man, it's really interesting to see how such a small franchise developed by a really small second-party Nintendo studio could develop such a it was a big game, man. There's like 60 hours of gameplay if you level grind in that game.
Yeah, I remember when I started playing that game, I couldn't believe I was playing a game that was this good on the Game Boy, because I hadn't played the Game Boy in a while, because there were, I didn't have a reason to play it. It was almost dead, and then that just brought the Game Boy back to life, and I mean, it was just magical, getting all these Pokemon, trying to find a good team, and going out and just trying to catch everything that you could find, and hoping that you would find something different every time that you went out in the little grass. And because most RPGs, level grinding sucks, and you don't want to go out there and fight the bad guys because you don't get to keep them, you don't get to use them, but in Pokemon you do. So it was...
Oh, one of my favorite moments in the original Pokemon game is by the time I got to the 3rd gym, Lieutenant Surge. Like, this is before, like, getting strategy guides and all this crap, and the internet wasn't really, like, there. Yet you couldn't just get on the internet and just find anything. I just remember being severely underpowered walking into Lieutenant Surge's gym. And as I'm fighting him, all his Pokemon are at least 6 or 7 levels stronger than mine. And I had just caught a Sandshrew earlier in the day. And Lieutenant Surge literally wipes out all my team except this level 8 Sandshrew. And I don't remember what level his Pokemon were at, but I believe they're like in the 20s or the 30s. I literally beat both of Lieutenant Surge's Pokemon with a level 8 Sandshrew. Because he could not use his electric attacks on me. He kept trying and they wouldn't work. And so all my Sandshrew had was Scratch. So I was literally scratching away at his HP. And it took 32 minutes for me to finally beat him. I had the Game Boy red light of battery death. It took that. I was like, oh my god. I almost got wiped out. And from then on, wow, I learned to overtrain for gyms and level grind as often as possible. Oh man, aside from that, a couple other things we get. We get the Elite Four. You actually get some strong story elements in the game with your rival, and like how he always seems to be like a step ahead of you. Oh, he always walks out of like the gym right as you're walking up to the gym. He's on the SSN with you. But then there's the Team Rocket side storyline that's really awesome. They want to take over the world, and it's up to you to stop them. And it seems like if you think about that, it's like you're really putting the fate of the world in a 10-year-old avatar's hands. It's like, I'm going to save the world, but I just turned 10. Talk about a story. There was a lot of stuff. And this started what would be known as like the Pokemon craze. Like these games, the launch strategy, at least in America, was one of the best rollouts I've ever seen. The anime came first in America, then the game, and then a like flood of merchandising. Like, this is one of the franchises that is so big that without the video game, this franchise could exist. If it was just an anime, it would exist. The fact that it is a game first, then an anime, it almost kind of worked in reverse, because normally we get games or we get movies or TV, then we get games.
Yeah.
So it's like the reverse effect, but it set off a storm. From like 1998 to 2000, Pokemon was everywhere. Lunchboxes, T-shirts. Man, it's a miracle like how big that very first game was. Obviously, and it was a strong game. It was a strong title. There was it had good source material. So, that's Pokemon Red and Blue. A year later, 1999, Pokemon Yellow. Did you have the version or not?
No.
Alright. I had Pokemon Yellow. Now, if you come from Pokemon Red and Blue, you know that there are an infamous numbers of glitches. It's like the Missing No and my favorite, was using the missing node to get the 99 rare candies or the 99 master balls, just breaking the game for your own purposes. Pokemon Yellow was really more of a reaction to all those glitches and whatnot, but it had the added caveat of letting you kind of play the same game as Red and Blue, but more through the eyes of the anime. So this time you take direct control of Ash. The only Pokemon you can receive as a starter is Pikachu, and as the game progresses, you will eventually get all the starters, which is kind of cool because it was, in my eyes, Pokemon Yellow is actually like the definitive version of that game. It's like the director's cut. The Team Rocket sprites were changed to look like Jesse, James, and Meowth, which is one of my favorite features in the game. They redesigned the sprites for Coffin and Ekans and just really, really put that game in a better space. Fixed all the glitches, just added a lot. And it had some semblance of color for the Game Boy Color. Not a lot. But you also got Surfing Pikachu, which was a cool thing because there's a little animation with Pikachu on a pink surfboard when you went into that mode of the game. It was actually sick. Oh, so that's it for the first generation of games. Around that time, and at least in America, we get the anime. This was one of my favorite anime when it first came out. It was a strong anime from the get for me. The game is the game. The game has its story, but for me, the anime is what really cemented what Pokemon's legacy really would go on to be.
Definitely. I mean, it still puts other animes to shame as far as how good the voice acting was. The quality of the voice acting for pretty much every character was great. It didn't sound cheesy. You know, it was genuinely funny. Like, there were episodes where I would just bust out laughing. You know, and a lot of times Japanese humor doesn't always translate over into American humor. So sometimes things that are supposed to be funny in some animes end up not really being that funny to an American audience. But Pokemon was funny, and I loved that show. And I mean, I used to run home from school just so that I didn't miss any of the episodes when they came on.
Yeah, and it has this this thing that you truly care about Ash and you want him to win, and even when he loses, he's not a character without who can't acknowledge what he does wrong. Like he has a strong backbone. When they did this character, they gave him actual character. He's not your archetypical hero who has to save the day. Yes, he will save the day, but it's never really easy for him. It's never easy for him to win, and I love the fact that he was always a step behind Gary. He was never on Gary's level. Only for him to place better in the Pokemon League. At the end of that first season, after the second season actually, when they get to the Pokemon League, Ash places higher, and it's kind of finally he's caught up. But it was just so good. Even the animation was, if I look back at it now, it was dated, but when it came out, I thought it looked amazing. And it was so cool to hear what a Pokemon sounded like instead of their stupid little cries.
Yeah, their little digitized Game Boy cries.
Yes. But, yeah, man, it was strong. And to this day, I still remember the Team Rocket, the motto. To protect the world from devastation, to unite all people within our nation, to denounce the evils of truth and love, to extend our reach to the stars above. Jesse, James, Team Rocket to blast off at the speed of light. Surrender now, prepare to fight. Meow, that's right. It's something that's embedded in my brain. It's literally embedded in my brain, and I just, every now and then, I'll go and I'll rewatch those first two seasons are great. I will rewatch those first two seasons, man. My favorite episode from that show is when Ash and Blaine have a fight, in the middle of a like active volcano, and I'm like, everyone's going to die. That's an active volcano, and you're playing with fire Pokemon. How is any of this a good idea? But it was such a good episode. It's fun. It's awesome to see Ash's Charizard like, balls up and fight the Magmar. One of the best episodes in the show, period. There were a lot of other memorable things from that show. And right from the bat, the show had balls. Right from the bat, the first episode, we see a Gen 2 Pokemon right away. At the end of the first episode, you see Ho-Oh flying off in the distance. I was like, that Pokemon is... By that point, I had already beaten the game, and I'm like, that Pokemon's not in the game? But there it was. He had, they had balls, man. Gen 2 Pokemon right off the bat. That to me was pretty awesome. Alright, so let's go ahead and move forward a little bit. Before the release of Gen 2, we had some spin-off games, man. We had some good spin-off games. We had Pokemon Snap, which, by the way, if they're ever going to make a Pokemon Snap game, please make it for mobile games and use AR, because that would be sick. Nintendo, I know you listen to my show.
Yeah, that's a good idea, actually.
Dude, but Pokemon Snap was literally... It's kind of a cash grab, but it totally works. I played that game endlessly on the N64. Little side note, Pokemon Snap is actually the sequel. The version we got here in the US is not the original version. The original version has a minimal amount of... it has less Pokemon than are in Pokemon Snap. I believe Pokemon Snap only has about 50 to 60 Pokemon in the game, but the first version only has something like 40 or 25. This was a fun game. You actually play as a character named Snap. He shows up in the anime, but under the name Todd. Help me, Nintendo, figure out where the name issue came about, but whatever. And you're basically commissioned by Professor Oak to go take pictures of Pokemon in the wild to see how they act in the wild. I always thought it was funny to throw like apples at the Pokemon to see how they would react. So I kept throwing apples at like the Mankeys and the Pidgeys. Just an all-around fun game. Not very long. You can beat it in like an hour, but super addictive. The next game, not necessarily a spin-off, but definitely worth noting, is Super Smash Bros. Featured Pikachu as a playable character. Arguably the best character in that game. It was very smart for them to include Pikachu. The brand, the franchise, Pokemon as a franchise, was still new, and it was a good way to get more exposure for, the budding franchise. Since Super Smash Bros., Pikachu has been my main. It was just fun. I love the what city was it? Viridian City, with the stage, and then the Pokemon would come out, and sometimes they'd blow you up. Fun game. Again, Pikachu has gone on to be in every Smash game, and since then a plethora of Pokemon have shown up in Smash. It goes to show that adding that franchise helped extend... Adding Pikachu to the Smash franchise helped extend the Smash franchise, and it definitely helped promote the Pokemon franchise. And the last spin-off game I want to talk about right now is Pokemon Stadium. This was the game, bro. This was the game. It's the first... we get all 150 Pokemon in full-on 3D. And it was just really nice to battle that way. There were a bunch of little mini games. Loved hearing some of the voice acting on the Pokemon. And best feature of all, you could actually play the main game, the main Pokemon game, on your TV using the transfer pack, which was so awesome because that was one of the first things I tried to do was load up my Pokemon game into the transfer pack and play it on my TV. Because it had that nice little feature where it 2 times the speed for your walking, so you could walk really fast. Sorry, I love Pokemon, but that's one of the things that hurt the franchise early on was not being able to walk fast or run without those stupid shoes. Just a good game and a nice way to keep extending the franchise. Now here, in my mind, this is a marquee moment for the Pokemon franchise. Pokemon, the first movie. How do you feel about that movie, bro?
I feel like that movie had an awesome soundtrack, which, I don't remember if I had it. I think I did. I think I ended up buying the soundtrack, and the way that they redid the theme song into a more
pop
R&B. It was like it was done by a boy band, I mean, it was funny because back in those days, boy bands were really popular anyway. But it was a great movie. I loved it. But for me, man, what I remember most about that movie was just that it had an awesome soundtrack.
Oh man, honestly, I love that movie. I just bought that movie on Blu-ray. They released a Blu-ray with the first 3 movies on them. And I really just wanted to watch that first movie again, so it was worth it. You're right, I love the soundtrack on that movie. There are a lot of weird guest features on that soundtrack. They were really smart in who they got for that soundtrack because NSYNC is on there, Christina Aguilera is on there, a couple other bands, and unfortunately High C is on there, and they're awful. They both sound like rats. But it was cool because it added to the mystique of the character Mewtwo. And it was just so good. It was one of those stories, one of those moments where it's you knew that this franchise was big. It was big. Funny story about that though. I was dating a crazy chick at the time, and we were supposed to meet to see the movie. She went to we picked the showtime. By the time I got to the movie theaters, the showtime was completely sold out. So I did not see the movie when it was supposed to. At the time it was supposed to. Clearly that made that girl angry, and ended up going to the later showing that day. On the way out, I actually ran into MarioAfterParty at the same showing. And this was right around the time we had just started to become friends, so it was really just interesting to see that we had yet again another shared interest. Because before that we were doing other stuff together, we were working musically with each other, and just so happened to run into each other at something that probably neither of us thought we would run into at because I was 16, he was what, 14, 15?
I was 14.
Yeah, so just ran into him there, no knowledge that he was going to be there. It was pretty funny. I was like, what are you doing here?
Alright, before we move on from this though, I just want to say the soundtrack, okay, it had Christina Aguilera, Britney Spears, NSYNC, 98 Degrees, and Aaron Carter. If you remember, 1999 to 2001 era, those were pretty much the biggest artists of that era, or some of the biggest artists. I mean, Nintendo, they really went all out, making sure that they got some of the biggest names in the music industry to be on that soundtrack.
Yeah, man, they really did go all out. All that being said, the first song is still the best. That remake of the Pokemon intro, the Pokemon theme song.
Oh yeah, I agree totally.
They just killed it. It's nailed, and I love how they do it in the movie, where they start singing, where the song comes on right as Ash is battling a second gen Pokemon, which is going to be my segue into talking about Pokemon Gen 2, Gold and Silver. There was a lot of hype leading up to Pokemon Gold and Silver. Every video game magazine, every news outlet was speculating this game. I don't know if you remember the Pika-Blue rumors, which eventually turned out to be Meryl.
Yeah, I remember.
There was just a lot of pre-hype about this game. Everybody wanted to know everything about this game. There was a lot of excitement. Everybody was on their edge. And 1999 comes, and they talk about Gold and Silver. We've already seen a few Gen 2 Pokemon. We saw Elekid in the first movie. We saw Donphan in the first movie. We've seen Ho-Oh in the anime. And we've also gotten Togepi in the anime. Gen 2, Gold and Silver finally come out. And we get some pretty cool stuff in this game. We get 100 new Pokemon. We start the story over. We get a new rival. We're a new Pokemon trainer. We get some cool features. Night and Day, which are features that are still used in the game. We get breeding, which is so important to the current Pokemon metagame. We get the cell phone feature, the in-game cell phone feature, the Pokénav. Whew. And my favorite feature, we get a post-game in this one. We get to replay the original 8 gyms as well as a final showdown with Red from the first game. Such a good game. This might, up until, Pokemon X and Y, I have to say that this is the best game in the franchise.
Yeah, I think it still today is the best game in the franchise just because of all the new things it introduced. If you listen to our top 10 greatest games of all time, we both argued that this was the best version just because of all the new things it introduced. It kind of set the standard for the games to follow, because then all these new features that they introduced, like the breeding and having an actual internal clock in the game, and things that happen during certain days of the week, and Pokemon that evolved, during the day or night. All those things went on to play a much larger role in the games that followed this one.
Oh, yeah. We also get shiny Pokemon for the first time. One of them being part of the story, the Red Gyarados. Always thought that was cool. Never really caught another shiny after that. Never really made it like a goal. But I do know of trainers who make it a goal to try to catch nothing but shiny Pokemon. And I pity their souls. Fun game. There's just so much, man, and I love the fact that it was backwards compatible. Being able to take all the Pokemon you had caught in from the first 3 games, Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, and taking them and putting them on the new game. So just a good game. I just remember me and my brother going head to head in Pokemon Gold and Silver so much. I had Silver because Lugia is clearly the better legendary. My brother had Gold, and we just go at it for hours. Still really hadn't played this game with MarioAfterParty. I don't think we played this game together until Diamond and Pearl, right?
Yeah, I think that's when we first started playing together. Right.
Strong game, man. This was a good game. I loved how they were able to go from this game and also spin it into the anime and just have Ash go to the Johto region and compete there. I thought that was really a nice way of continuing the series for the anime, and it just made the game that much more fun to play. But that game is dark, man. Team Rocket is back in some capacity, and they're cutting Slowpoke's tails off. I was like, what is wrong with this game? Why are they cutting off their tails? A little dark. That brings us to Gen 3. This is the first time that the Pokemon franchises transitions from one console to another. Gen 3, initially not my favorite in the franchise. This is the first time I remember a Pokemon game actually being brutal. Because we have the outside of battle status effects. Like if you walk into the desert, the sandstorm can hurt your Pokemon. That was brutal. The gym leaders were also pretty brutal in that game and non-relenting. I just remember this game. I remember getting this game. I got it around Easter. And I just remember just really trying to grind and finding it difficult. And Game Freak has actually gone on record of saying that Gen 3 was actually the hardest Pokemon game. Because by the time they got to this generation, they had assumed that their fan base had matured and grown up a lot. So they decided to up the ante, and what they did was they made a brutally hard Pokemon game. And so brutally hard, in fact, that when they re-released the game, or remade the game in 2014, that they actually scaled down the gym leaders. Because I bought the strategy guide for Pokemon Ruby back in the day, and I bought the strategy guide for the remakes, and I started comparing them. And I'm looking at the levels of the gym leaders. All their Pokemon are at least 3 levels lower than where they are in the original game. They made a brutally hard Pokemon game. Did you get into this generation, or did you skip out on this generation, didn't you?
Yes, this is the only generation that I did not play, sadly, but it was because I never bought a Game Boy Advance, so that's the reason why. But I did get back into it again, pretty hardcore, for Diamond and Pearl.
In 2004, the DS was released, and in 2006 in Japan, 2007 in North America, we get Pokemon Generation 4. This generation has some features that really helped advance the franchise, man. Like, it took the franchise to the next level, and it was definitely a step into the area that we're getting into now with Pokemon showing up on the mobile market. I think this game is Nintendo's first step into that direction for the franchise. Pokemon Gen 4, or Diamond and Pearl, introduce us to the Wi-Fi feature. The first time that you can trade Pokemon via the internet. You don't have to physically be present, and you don't have to be stuck with those bastardizing link cables. You don't have to worry about losing your trade so easily, as Chris has pointed out that he's tortured his sister with.
Yes, that was If you listen to the top 10, again, that's a little story. I unplugged the cable when we were trading the Pokemon, and basically her Pokemon was in the process of going from her Game Boy to mine, and it somehow got deleted because I unplugged it because I was being a little shit, and she was pretty devastated.
You're a bad older brother, man.
I was horrible. But Pokemon Diamond and Pearl was important to me because that's the game that brought me back. I got a Nintendo DS specifically for that game, and during this time I was living in England, and NyceOne and I would use the DS to communicate with each other.
Hell yeah.
We would hook it up on Wi-Fi, and then go into the trading room to trade with each other. And because the DS had a microphone in it and it was capable of voice, we would talk. So I would basically just hold the DS up to my head and use it as a phone. And you got to remember, this is like 2006 which is before the iPhone came out. The iPhone didn't
Yep.
come out until 2007. So
Yep.
this is before FaceTime. This is before, like, you know, you could really use a lot of these apps that we have today over Wi-Fi to get a... And we were basically making free international phone calls to each other using this game. So it was... I mean, this game is, like, important to my life in so many ways.
Yeah, man, those were... It was incredibly cool to be able to communicate, because I was here in Florida, and you were in London, and it was pretty pivotal because, like, nobody was using things like MSN Messenger anymore, and FaceTime didn't even get started until iPhone's like fourth generation phone, or yeah.
Right. And I think there was Skype. However, you would have had to sit down at your computer, and with the DS, I could walk around the whole house.
Exactly.
So that
the freedom of mobility. Funnily enough, we actually used this game when Mario Kart Wii came out to communicate with each other as well.
That's right, man. That's crazy. Yeah, we would play Mario Kart on the Wii, and we would use our DSs as phones to talk to each other. Since I lived in another country, I'm telling you, the Nintendo DS was a pretty amazing piece of technology for 2006. You got to remember the year it came out, and that's 10 years ago. I mean, it was pretty awesome what it could do back in those days.
Yeah, and what it did was it really, in my opinion, it advanced the Pokemon franchise too, because not only could you, get online, not only could you have the voice communication with your friends, but it also brought us the global trade station, the GTS, Trade Online, and they built a whole website that you could use to see who was trading for what, and it's a very good website. Like, they did a lot to it Nintendo and Game Freak worked very hard to make this game really accessible, and Nintendo doesn't really like to play with a lot of like software that isn't theirs. So the fact that they built a website around the Pokemon franchise, that was pretty cool. I love putting the Pokemon in there and trying to find the right, seeing who was trading in what country and seeing if I could get every Pokemon. This was one of my favorite generations for that reason. They just, on top of that, it was just cool to be able to talk to Mario AfterParty on the voice chat. So this was a fun station. This game also had connectivity to a Pokemon spin-off game, the Pokemon Ranger game. If you're into the Pokemon spin-offs and you buy the first Pokemon Ranger, if you beat the game, there is a side mission or a post-game mission where you have to catch a Manaphy or save a Manaphy. And from there, you can trade that Manaphy to your copy of Diamond and Pearl. Which I did, because I'm such a big Pokemon nerd that I will buy all the side games. Some of them are much better than others. But they did a good job. And like I said, things like the features that this game added, I think set a precedence for moving into the mobile arena. And games like Pokemon Go can really thank Diamond and Pearl for making the right steps to help advance the franchise. Because where we're going now is we're going into the completely mobile market, and that's something that couldn't have happened without things like the Pokemon franchise moving into the Wi-Fi realm. And with that, let's go ahead and let's move into the next generation. Pokemon Black and Pokemon White. This is kind of one of my... It's hard for me, this game. While it's not one of my favorite generations, it really upped the visual quality of Pokemon games. I remember going online, checking the various websites that I check day by day, and new screenshots came out. And I just remember calling Mario After Party. I don't even remember what time I called him, because at the time he was living in Vegas. So
Las Vegas, I think.
I just remember calling him. I was like, "Yo, go check out the stuff." He's like, "I'm at work." But this was a big step graphically for the franchise.
Or no, 2011. I'm trying to think. Man, what was that? It doesn't matter. Go.
No, you weren't. You were here. You were here in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got here.
I was in Tampa. Yeah, I was in Tampa.
I just remember calling you. I know you were at work, but I was off that day, and I was actually on my way to the beach. So I was completely inconvenienced. I mean, I completely inconvenienced you. But this is a good generation visually. You had your first like pseudo 3D graphics. Your first, to me this was kind of like a backstep. I think where all the games before had really set like the game before had set like this really strong Wi-Fi and voice chat like precedent. This game really doesn't add anything to the Pokemon franchise.
I agree with you. It's not my favorite generation, but that said, I think it's the generation with the best story, because that is the first time where I actually cared about the story in a Pokemon game. Probably the only time. Because, Team Plasma is led by N, who sees Pokemon as friends rather than using them for sport. He feels like using them to fight against each other is cruel, and that keeping them in Pokeballs is like enslaving them, because you're not allowing them to be free, and they're constantly prisoners in Pokeballs until you throw them out to fight each other. And I was like thinking to myself, oh my God, he's right. And I was like, all these years, I've been torturing these Pokemon, and it made me think. I was like, that is such a good storyline, because it makes you, it makes the villain in the story, appear to be in some ways good, and it's hard to almost choose whether or not is this guy really evil or not. You can kind of relate to some of the things that he's saying, and that was the best storyline in all the generations, in my opinion.
Yeah. This game does have a few features. I don't think any of them are really significant, but let's go ahead and do a little quick rundown. This is the first Pokemon generation to have seasons, similar to like the internal clock, but every month there's like your winter, your summer, and your fall. They don't really show spring so much, but yeah, it will snow some months, or it'll be sunny, or you'll see the changing of the leaves. We have that. We also have triple battles, which is, an advancement of the double battles that we had in previous games. We also have rotation battles where your Pokemon will rotate their position. So you have like 3 Pokemon and they'll switch over. Not really like great features in my opinion. Just this game didn't add enough to the franchise. Another cool thing about this generation, though, is this generation had direct sequels. Mario After Party, obviously, he's clearly a fan of the story mode of the actual story itself. This game actually advances the story of N further. Again, this generation, I know a lot of people claim that this is their favorite generation. In my opinion, there's just not enough to it. It did have some really good designs for the Pokemon themselves. Like Kyurem was one of my favorite looking. I also like the way Dialga and Palkia looked. But there wasn't enough in that game. Wait, did I say? No, I mean Reshiram and Zekrom. I'm sorry, guys. Reshiram and Zekrom, I thought they looked great, but there wasn't really a lot in this game that kept me hooked on the edge of my seat. This generation was lacking. So let's go ahead and move on to Gen 6. Pokemon X and Y. For me, this is one of my favorite Pokemon games. This is our first full step. Once again, Pokemon transitions from one piece of hardware to another. We are on the 3DS, and with the 3DS comes visually the most appealing Pokemon game. I love Pokemon X and Y. I love the look of the game. I love the customization features of your character. Guys, I want to point something out. If any video game company that lets you take complete control of your avatar's style of dress, I'm hooked. It got me in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and it got me in Pokemon X and Y. I love making my character change clothes. I gotta stay fresh. You already know.
That's right. In my opinion, Pokemon X and Y is probably the second best game in the series after only Gold and Silver. I loved it. I think if this game had come out when I was in high school, it would probably be my favorite game. I kind of wish that I would have had more people I knew who played it so I could have taken advantage of all the features of this game more. But yeah, it's the prettiest game, and it added a new type. It's been a long time since, Gold and Silver added Dark and Steel. That's another thing that they added. And since Gold and Silver, we had not added a new type into the mix until X and Y. And then they added Fairy type, which I love. My only criticism of this game is that they didn't add enough Fairy type Pokemon in, and they didn't add enough good Fairy type that you would be able to include in your team. I think I had Sylveon. Sylveon was good.
Yeah.
But, really, it just was... I wanted more, but I really loved this game though. It was nice to finally get 3D.
Oh yeah, not only that, man, but Mega Evolution, it completely changes the game, and it completely changes the meta of the game. But needless to say, that function, Mega Evolution, it is just awesome. The way certain Pokemon look when they Mega Evolve. My Mega Mewtwo X is a beast, by the way. Just beastly. I love that. Mega Evolution is just a strong concept. This is, again, one of the best games. Also in this generation, we get another remake. We get Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, which, like, I gotta say this. They are the definitive versions of that game. We get to keep things like Mega Evolution and whatnot. Plus the story that I didn't think was there the first time around, I think it works much better now that I'm in my 30s. I appreciate the story of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire more. And that's going to be it for our main series. But we promised you that this game was coming to take over the FGC and the mobile market. We did a whole episode on Pokemon Go, and we are getting closer and closer to this game coming out. And I've said it before, I'm excited for what this game is going to bring to the franchise. The fact that they're going completely mobile completely changes everything that we know about Pokemon. And it refreshes the franchise. It brings new life into a franchise that really kind of doesn't need new life because the life that it has is still flourishing. But I'm super excited to get my hands on it. Press conference coming in March. Can't wait to hear what's going to be said. And what's also coming in March is Pokken Tournament. This is the first time that the Pokemon franchise is stepping into the FGC on its own accord and not via Smash. Everything I've seen about this game looks exciting. Just looks really cool. The art style looks really cool. The battles look really flashy. I'm excited to get my hands on another fighter, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what this game brings to Evo and whatnot. I'm really looking forward to see the community that can be built by the time that Evo comes about. After Party, what are you thinking about these two games?
Well, train on. That's all I gotta say.
Train on, baby. Alright, guys, that's going to wrap up this episode of the SplatZones, but before we go, we want to give a special shout out to our contest winner, Yoshi Endless Runner. He went ahead and hit us up with a really good email that I want to share with everybody. Hey SplatZoners, I'm a relatively new listener, but you guys are still a relatively new show, so I guess we're even. You guys have had some interesting shows, and I think my favorite episode so far is the year in review. You guys are really fun, and it was cool to be reminded of the year Nintendo had as a whole versus the year they probably should have had. I've got a few questions. First things first, when is MarioAfterParty going to take on the reins as host again? I think he has made some really strong points and has a very realistic expectations to counter NyceOne983, but NyceOne983 has very much energy. He is very much the energy of the show. I think my favorite thing is when you guys give your opinions on certain things. I just listened to your Mario episode and I really learned so much about the character. You guys took an in-depth approach. Secondly, I know you guys like the monthly format, but have you thought about going bi-weekly? Finally, my Mario memory is playing Mario Kart DS with my older brother. We only had one kart, so I had to race as Shy Guy, but we'd play that game in the car together on road trips and have a lot of fun. He would beat me all the time, but we would still laugh and scream at each other in a great way. I hope you guys keep on making the show and remember to stay fresh. Yoshi Endless Runner.
That was a really nice letter.
Yeah, thank you, Yoshi Endless Runner. So you're going to go ahead. You are the winner of our Mario prize pack. So just go ahead, be sure to email us your information, and we'll go ahead and make sure we get that sent out to you.
And Yoshi Endless Runner, just to answer your question, I'll probably take over the reins for the, I'm not sure when. I will definitely do it again. Just, it's got to be the right episode. NyceOne has put in a lot of work for a lot of these episodes, and I just want to make sure the next time I do it again that I can match his work ethic. So, but I promise you, I will do it again.
Yeah, let's go ahead and answer your other question too, just while we're here. Bi-weekly probably going to work to us. We're both relatively busy. We're both, we're in our 30s. We're to date ourselves a little bit. We both work full time, so probably not going to be able to go bi-weekly. Plus, we like to make sure that we cover the news stories. So we like to have a little bit of speculative talk. And Nintendo just doesn't release enough news on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis for us to go ahead and do that. But we do appreciate the feedback, and thank you to everybody who entered the contest this month. So this month we have one more contest, and that's going to be for another Pokemon prize pack. And we just want to know, what's your favorite Pokemon generation or spin-off game, and give us a reason why. And go ahead and make sure you hit us up by email, NyceOne983@gmail.com, or go ahead and check out the website, NyceOne983.wix.com. That's going to be it for this episode, guys. And you know how we like to leave things here. Stay fresh!
Stay fresh!
Deuces!